Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to preseason hockey. Yes, it is back, and we are back in the Maple Leafs Lounge to talk all about it. I'm joined, as always, by Peter Baracchini, the old Prof, Jim Parsons, and, of course, our buddy Alex Hobson. I'm your host, Kevin Armstrong. Let's jump right in because it was a lot of fun to watch team number one for the Maple Leafs on ice against the Montreal Canadiens, a 4-1 victory. And I do hear that it is actually game 8. So the Leafs have advanced to the second round of the playoffs with maybe not. But we're beyond that now. As Dubas said in his marketing press conference this week, it's time to rewrite the story going forward. And I think we saw a little bit of a glimpse of that. And team number one really did set the bar high for team number two that will be competing here very shortly. So let's do our quick takeaways. Alex, you just put out an article with your 3 quick takeaways, and we can jump into those as we go.
Yep. So my 3 takeaways from last night, obviously, were I thought William Nylander played exceptionally well. I think he was one of the best. Well, he was their best player in the playoffs against Montreal, and he just picked up right where he left off. He was controlling the play all night. I also thought that the top line with Tavares, Michael Bunting, and Josh Hosang looked really well. I thought it was obviously great to see John Tavares back on the ice after all that he's been through over the past couple months, and then he had a couple of jet engines on either side of him. Michael Bunting and Josh Hosang were absolutely motoring all over the ice last night, so that was cool to see. And of course, Kurtis Gabriel he definitely made his presence known last night. If I could think of one player who was all over the place, it was him. So a lot of fun and a lot of good things to see last night for sure.
All right, so let's dive into each one of those. Kurtis Gabriel, I wrote 2 pretty long stories after talking with him on Instagram Live a few weeks ago, and I've been a fan of his for a while, but especially after talking with him and seeing the kind of guy that he is. And I know, I watched every time 29 came on the ice. He doesn't have the same skating that we are used to when we see Maple Leafs hockey. And Kurtis would probably be the first one to say that. He lumbers. But man, he is the guy that has been missing from this team. This type of player that lays the body. He throws a guy practically out of the rink in one of his first shifts. He just rams people. He's totally out of gas, and he's still throwing his body around. And of course, getting into a fight with his old buddy that he played with in New Jersey. They were going to go again, but apparently he was a little bit beat up from that one. But anyway, this is the guy that Toronto needs. This is the guy that they are so desperately lacking in those times when you really need a little bit of physical presence. And I know his skating isn't up to par with what we see with the Maple Leafs, but Peter, I think Kurtis Gabriel should make this team.
I mean, even if he's only coming in and out of the lineup every now and then, he deserves a spot as sort of like the 13th, 14th forward. I mean, you see the impact that he has, and you touch on his skating. Yeah, like it was very noticeable that he's not the fastest guy out there, but his heart, his grit, the energy that he brings. I mean, we saw him throw Alexander Romanov into the middle of in between the team benches. You know, everyone online, I mean, especially in the Twitterverse, loves to see that. That was that missing element that we were missing. That was the element that Wayne Simmons brought early on, but sort of fizzled out towards the end and in the playoffs. And, you know, him getting into that fight, bringing that physical edge, it's something this team needs. It's something that every team needs, especially if you're going into the playoffs, that guy to sort of boost the morale of the team. And, you know, we saw, I didn't expect this, but we saw the offensive awareness, you know, intercepting that play and getting the empty net goal to make it 4-0. I mean, you could tell he was really excited. The team was excited and the fans were excited. So different element for sure, but at the same time, he still brings the energy and the mentality that this team needs. And I think even I believe I saw a quote this morning from John Tavares and a couple of other players. They're saying that he brings that factor on and off the ice. So to have him in there, to be a part of this team, I say let's do it.
Yeah, and I know that his mom came down and watched, and as soon as he signed with Toronto, she went out and got a bumper sticker and put it on the car, and he was like, "Oh, Mom." He's not taking anything for granted. He's like, I still got to make this team, but she must have been pretty excited. They've got a special bond, and I was thinking about her when I saw Kurtis out there having such a great night. Alex, what did you touch on in your article when it came to Kurtis, and do you think he can be part of this team?
Well, we listened to the press conference following the game, and all these players, Tavares, Muzzin, Bunting, they were all talking about how special it was to be playing in front of the fans. And when I saw Kurtis Gabriel play last night, I saw a guy who wanted to take it upon himself to give the fans what they've been wanting for the past 2 years or 18 months or whatever it's been since the pandemic started. The virtual crowd noise just wasn't the same last year. And, for a guy like Gabriel to go out there, throw a massive hit on what was his first or second shift of the game, drop the gloves to somebody on the Habs, and then score a goal towards the end. I mean, you've got a guy there who just wants to do everything that he can to bring meaningful and exciting hockey back to Toronto. And while I agree with Peter in the sense that he's probably not going to be a regular on this team, I see him sort of being similar to what Scott Sabourin was last year for the Leafs. Maybe, he might play a little bit more, get into more games here and there, but he won't be an everyday player. And having said that, I don't think Kyle Dubas brought him in for no reason. I think he brought him in knowing how much energy he brings and how much bringing him in under the notion that he is going to come out and work his tail off every single day. He's going to be bringing you that effort whenever he takes the ice. And while he may not have the skill to be a regular player, I mean, I think at the very least, having that kind of personality and having a player like him in the locker room is enough to make his presence felt and sort of be contagious to the rest of the team.
Yeah. And just to add a bit, I was looking at the penalty minutes last year, just looking at the stats, and he was like number 16 in the NHL in penalty minutes. So I think with 55, and it was so fun to look at it. Two things. One was everybody around him had played 40 in the 30s and 40s and 50 games, but he had played 11. He was 16th after playing 11 games, and he was the only person on the sheet that hadn't scored a point, hadn't had a goal or assist. So when he scored that goal last night, I remembered that, and I thought, good for him for scoring. I thought that was great.
And if you do the quick math, 55 divided by 11 is one fight in every one of those 11 games.
That's right.
So I will say, though, guys, and I totally get what you're saying about, because I said he lumbers, but to me, I think you need to give him the ice time to get him better, because I think I'm kind of done with the pretty hockey that we get during the regular season that dies during the playoffs. You need to have guys like that ready to play in every game of the playoffs and ready to go. And I think only bringing him in when, there's a fight to be had or something else, it kind of takes away from the energy and the momentum that guy can bring to the games.
Yeah. He really was big.
Yeah. Big guy for sure.
Yeah,
6'4", 216. Yeah. All right. This is the Hockey Writers. You're watching the Maple Leafs Lounge. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite social media channels. Now let's dive into number 2 on that list, or one of 3 anyway. And that was the play of William Nylander. And he was definitely noticeable out on the ice. As always, usually it's because of the blonde hair flying out, but he did get a haircut. Very nice look. Well, but there was a graphic that went up that talked about the ice time, and he is well short, at least 4 to 5 minutes short of the other core 4 players when it comes to ice time. And it looks like Toronto is looking at ways of getting him on ice more. What did you see with that, Jim?
Yeah, I totally agree that. I mean, he starts the game off by going on a rush and cutting through every single person on the other team, and then he was so fast. He was so under control. And I immediately thought, all off season long, there's been a call to trade him. And I think, why would they trade this guy? He's amazing. He could be on so many other teams. He could be the very best player they had, and we have him on the Maple Leafs. And the second thing that was interesting to me is I thought he played on the left side some of the time, and I thought that's an interesting strategy, because I thought if that's true, that Keefe might be thinking that there will be times during the regular season to keep Marner on the right, Matthews in the middle, and move Nylander up to the left side. There's a loaded line for you. And I can see that really playing well at certain times in the season. So I agree. He played great, and I thought, we're lucky to have him, and I want to see him play more, because he was just not skilled and fast. He was under control. He was watching that ice. You could see him. And that play, waiting, hitting Muzzin coming up, good play, great play.
I also liked when I saw him out on the penalty kill, because that is the biggest hit on Willie's game, is that he doesn't play defense. And I loved that they threw him out on the penalty kill, and he did well. He didn't make any mistakes on the penalty kill, kept it very simple, and played some good hockey there. Peter, what did you see with Willie?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch up on the penalty kill, I mean, I think having someone with his quick speed and his skill set on the penalty kill to help with that quick transition to turn pucks over, I think is going to be a really great asset. And I want to touch up on two things. One, about what Jim said about Nylander being on the top line. I think that would work out very well. Instead of having a Bunting or Ritchie take over for HYMAN, you have Nylander. And this would work out well, because we saw him set up on the power play, and he was on his off wing. So if you have Marner as a setup on the right side and have Matthew in the center, and then you have that other shooting option of Nylander if you can't get to Matthews, we've seen how great Nylander can shoot the puck, especially if he's on his off wing right now. I think this could be a really great asset, because even on that power play, he was on his off wing, got the shot on net, and then John Tavares tipped it in. Something that David Alter tweeted out about the power play sequence or setup earlier in the day, and it was the exact same setup. Sandin and Nylander to the front of the net to try to get a tip in, and John Tavares was there for the make it 2-0. So I think Nylander on his off wing is going to be a really big X factor in a good way for the team going forward, because he can still be sneaky with his passing, but he has been strong on his shooting. So to get him out of his comfort zone and on his, main wing, we saw how well he could shoot there. But if he's worked on his one-timer, I think that's going to be a really great thing going forward.
Yeah. And just to add about Tavares carried a line without any stars, and he carried it well. And I thought, Peter, just to add to that, I think that could work. I never thought of it as a more common, a regular occurrence, but I was very pleased to see Tavares back. That made me smile. Number two, that he carried that line with those two kids, those speed merchants. I thought he played really well, and I thought this guy could be a real strong character leader on a particular line. So I thought it was a great game for that too.
Alex, final word on the Nylander topic?
I remember kind of around the start of Nylander, Marner, and Matthews' careers, when there was a time when Mike Babcock tried to really spread out the offense, and he used obviously Matthews on his own line, then he had Marner on his own line, and he had Nylander on his own line. And at the time, I think this would have been maybe 2017, 2018, around then, Nylander couldn't really carry his own line like that. But we're seeing a completely different version of William Nylander now, and it just kind of serves as a testament to how far he's come as a player, because now I am more than comfortable having William Nylander drive a line. And while I'm not sure if he's going to be doing that this season, I think it'll show in his game how much of a dominant player he can be. Like I said off the top, he was the best player by far for the Leafs in the series against Montreal, and he picked up right where he left off, coming back. Even though it was a preseason game, you could just tell that when he was on the ice, the Leafs more often than not had the puck. And I would like to see that experiment of him on the top line, but at the same time, I think having him and Tavares on the second line could work just equally as well. I'm a big fan of what we saw out of him.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Montreal, because I actually think that might have been a turning point for him. Everyone talked about how he talked more on the bench, how he took on more of a leadership role during that time as well. And that might've been with Tavares down, but Willie stepped up, and I don't think he's taken a step back down. He liked what he saw. And now we get to see that this season. So Willie Nylander, different version. I don't know if he'll change his number again, but he's looking like a new guy out there so far in game one of the preseason, but we'll take it. So one more thing on that list, they were trying to refer to it as the Toronto line when you had Bunting, Hosang, and Tavares, and Jim just mentioned on Tavares as well there, but an all Toronto line, Tavares said, well, if that's what sells newspapers, then that's okay too. But if that's what they want to call it, he laughed that one off. But at the same time, when Bunting scored that goal and looked up into the crowd, I was pretty sure he was looking up into that 20 to 30 tickets that he had handed out before that game. And we've seen all the pictures. He's always been a Leafs fan, and this is a dream come true for him. Peter, was this a moment for Bunting, because he was really an X factor coming into this? He looked good at the World Championships. He looked good for a little bit in Arizona, but other than that, he hasn't done a whole lot since being drafted in the NHL a number of years ago. So he looked pretty good.
Yeah, and considering he was on a Arizona Coyotes team that really didn't go anywhere the previous year before, small sample size, got the goals, it may not translate, but we saw what I've seen with him with the Coyotes is the exact same player that we saw in one game with the Maple Leafs right now. Being energetic, getting in on the forecheck, getting into open areas, and that pass by TJ Brody was just phenomenal. And Bunting with his stick all the way down just gets it by, and you could tell that when he scored that, he had like the most infectious smile that I was even happy that he scored, and I was smiling because you always want to see that. You want to see a hometown kid succeed no matter what. I mean, you want to see everybody succeed, but something special about a Toronto native coming back, scoring a goal, it's the perfect narrative. I mean, you really can't describe that. But overall, Bunting really impressed me from the very beginning to the very end. And I think this is just the beginning of what we're going to see from him. We're going to see him get to the dirty areas. We're going to see him get underneath the opposition's skin. There was a couple times where he instigated a few scrums, and I'm like, you know what? So be it. So if has that Brad Marchand mentality, and he even does that against Brad Marchand, play a little chess match with him, let's go. I'm all for it.
Yeah. I was actually disappointed when the game ended last night because I wanted more. I wanted to see more of what these guys can do because we've been waiting so long. And you kind of picked up on Hosang, Alex, with, his chance here. He's on a PTO right now. Wayne Simmons says that he can make this team, no doubt, which I thought was pretty, I don't know. Does that mean Wayne Simmons doesn't make the team? Because there's a lot of guys, you know what I mean? But Hosang did not look out of place. And I'm also happy he's not wearing 66, but he looked pretty good on that top line.
No, he absolutely did. And, watching Josh Hosang last night, he looked like a player who was trying to turn a PTO into an NHL contract. And obviously you kind of expect that kind of effort from guys who are on PTOs, because if you're not going to try out for a team with your best effort, then what's the point of even coming to the tryout? But at the same time, I think Josh Hosang probably realizes that it is a dogfight to make this roster as a forward, especially. And I almost feel like he's going to have to give that effort every single night. And I think he's capable of doing that because obviously he's had a bit of a rocky path since he got to the NHL. He's looked good in limited sample sizes with the New York Islanders, but he's been away from the NHL for a couple of years now. And, we obviously all heard that quote about how he said he would start off in the ECHL or even start off sharpening skates if it meant starting somewhere to make the Leafs. And, just watching the way that last season played out, I think at the very least, all Leaf fans are asking for out of their team this year is a team full of guys with that mentality. Guys who want to come out, they want to be the best they can every single night, who don't take a night off. And if Hosang can contribute to that mentality, I think the production will eventually start to show for itself. And I think it'll have an effect on the team. And in that case, he shouldn't have any issue making the team if he's going to play like that every night.
Thought it was interesting too that Toronto now has 3 first-round draft picks from the 2014 draft as well, with Nylander, Ritchie, Hosang. see how that works out. I'm excited to see Nick Ritchie play for sure.
Oh,
Jim, you got the final word on this topic.
Well, I don't think after last night, Hosang will pass through waivers. So I think there's no chance that he won't get an NHL contract from the stuff. It's his. I think about he and Bunting. We have no question about what Bunting's going to bring every single night. We do have a question whether Hosang's going to hold on to that sort of attitude, because that's been the case in the past. I think he played 53 games with the Islanders the last time he was a full-time player, but he has I watched Doug Waite, the Islanders coach, talk about him and the commitment that he had. So it isn't like he hasn't shown stretches of commitment. It's that he can't keep it. And if he can keep it, I think he's an amazing player. There's no question his skill set is elite. There's no question his speed is elite. So I hope he does. It would be I love these comeback stories, as you know, and he certainly could be one. And if that happens, what a home run for Kyle Dubas and the organization.
This is the Hockey Writers. Thank you for watching the Maple Leafs Lounge. Make sure you like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Now, we got to watch some preseason hockey, but things started buzzing right away when they had their first ever marketing day. I've never seen it referred to as marketing day before. Usually it's just kind of day one where everyone gets to talk to the players again. But I wrote a story about this saying like it's a flip the narrative. They've had enough talking about all that went down last May. It's time to get over it and move on. I cannot imagine being these guys right now and listening to the same questions over and over and over again. I know it was just writing about it. I'm sick of writing about it. I try to not even refer to it anymore, but it is something that's happened. But anyway, Peter, you were watching that and did your takeaways on that press conference with Dubas as well. What were the key points you picked up on?
The main things that I picked up were the competition aspects in regards to, how Campbell and Mrazek are going to push each other for that number one spot, the depth of on the wing of what's going to unfold, especially with what we talked about with Michael Bunting, Hosang, Nick Robertson battling for a spot on the left wing as well, and even making the team. And also just the last one was kind of just like this being the last chance, as we've talked about multiple times before, but trying to flip the narrative and say, no, this isn't our last chance. We have confidence in this group. As Dubas has stated multiple times and even reiterated during that conference, he has full confidence. And the fact that he went out and found all these depth pieces to build around these guys is a hopeful sign that, we're seeing big steps. I mean, we've already seen that with Nylander. Marner looked really great early on in the informal skates and practices. So let's hope that goes forward. But for me, it's the sticking point is the competition factor. Again, based on what we saw with Bunting and Hosang last night, it's going to be really difficult for someone like Nick Robertson, who I'm still very high on as a top prospect, to make this team this year. And I think this is a case where maybe the competition and the skill set of, veteran players like Hosang, who granted very limited sample in the NHL with only 24 points in 53 games, but it's still a small sample, but that production, considering where he was playing with the Islanders, was very good. And the fact that he didn't get that opportunity consistently because of his past and character issues that maybe it's in totally easy fix, the Islanders just didn't feel he was the right fit. And he kind of took that to heart. And now he's showing his true worth right now. So with him being a major factor, with Bunting and Ritchie in the fold, with Andre Kasha on the right wing and Nikita Gusev, it's really difficult for both not only the left wing, but the right wing as well. So that was the main sticking point for me, because a lot is coming down to it. And they even mentioned a graphic on there, and I mentioned this as well. Bringing in 3 players for the price of 1 in Zach Hyman. You have 3 different players, and I've even mentioned this before, to do a single aspect that Zach Hyman brought. So it's 3 players by committee to form 1 player. That to me is a very smart move, considering all 3 combined is 1 Zach Hyman. And I know we talk about Zach Hyman is his own player, but they all had the qualities that Hyman brought. And I think that going forward, those three players in Richie, Bunting, and Kasha. And even if you want to throw in Hosang in there as well, he's got a little bit of energy to him as well. So technically 4 players for one, and those cheap salaries, and even a cheaper salary for Hosang. Great value and great finds on Dubas.
And one thing that I want to add real quick before we move on, just through my eyes last night and based on what I saw from Michael Bunting, he looks almost exactly like what HYMAN brought to the team. But what he also has that I don't think HYMAN had is the pest aspect. And it's, Zach HYMAN, we all talk about the fact that he is a super hard worker and he's always the first one in the corners. He's not afraid to throw the body. And those things are all true, but you never really saw Zach HYMAN trying to get under the opponent's skin. He would stand up for his teammates if he had to, and he'd be right in the middle of the scrum trying to make things happen. But Bunting, I saw him pushing and shoving with Habs players on multiple occasions last night. So I think that the Leafs, while yes, they absolutely do have, 3-4 players for the price of one Zach HYMAN. In that sense, I feel like Michael Bunting's a lot closer to Zach HYMAN than some people might think. And, what he does, he kind of reminds me of what HYMAN was early on in his career, except like I said, he's got that pest aspect to him. So I don't know if he'll replicate the offense that HYMAN's been able to bring over the past couple years, or, maybe the durability, but either way, I think we are going to be seeing a very, very close image to Zach HYMAN and Michael Bunting, along with the pest aspect that he brings.
Yeah, I'm thinking as much as I don't like hearing about the Leafs a few months ago, I'm almost sick of hearing about Zach HYMAN and the clone of who's going to be for Zach HYMAN. Yeah, I really think, I get why we have to talk about it because Zach was a big impact to this team. But I'm guessing in the locker room, that's almost as annoying as the question of how do you get over the disappointment is like, how do you find a new Zach HYMAN? Do you miss Zach HYMAN? I'm thinking these things must be getting on the nerves of the guys answering the same things over and over again. Agreed that there is definitely some new blood in there that will definitely replace the beloved Zach HYMAN, who is going to be, I don't know if you guys saw the news, but looks like he's going to be starting on Connor McDavid's line along with Jesse Pulvieri. So, because they're trying to split up McDavid and Draisaitl a little bit. So good on Zach. How about that for a career? Hey, he's gone from playing with Matthews to now McDavid. So
guaranteed
good on Zach.
Points.
Yeah. Geez. Okay, so we'll wrap it up with a little bit of viewer comments on our last show, and it's all love. But I'm going to tell you guys that we have been referred to as the Dubas defenders. You know what? I think they might be right.
Yeah.
No argument there.
It's kind of hard because we do try to keep this as unbiased as possible. But the problem with Kyle Dubas is he's got to be the nicest guy. Like, really, He is so nice. No offense to Jack Campbell, but Kyle Dubas is a very nice man. And it kind of makes it difficult to even write anything negative about him because you just see that he's such a nice guy. But at the same time, if you stripped all that away and you said, you put in a Brian Burke in there who didn't care if you liked him or not. And he made these same moves, signed big contracts, didn't trade away players before they became free agents, all those different things that are the big sticking points on Dubas. If it wasn't a nice guy, if it was more of a Berkey, would we be Dubas defenders? Be honest, guys.
Yes, we would be. And I'll tell you why. Because strictly speaking about this season and last season and this past off season, and you know what, we keep talking about things that we're tired of talking about. And believe me, I am tired of talking about this, and I'm tired of saying this sentence because I think I've probably done it at least 5 times.
You're going to die on the hill. You're going to die on the hill.
I am going to die on the hill that the Leafs could have made a cup run this year if Matthews and Marner decided to show up in games 5, 6, and 7. And it all comes back to that. You can rip Dubas and you can say, oh, we shouldn't have signed Matthews and Marner to those contracts. If he didn't sign them to those contracts, the outcry would have been much worse. And the reception of the fans would have been much worse. And I'm going to leave it at that. There were moves that Dubas made that I wasn't a fan of. I mean, now obviously looking back at the Foligno trade, for example, I think it was the right move to make at the time, but it obviously didn't work out to be a good move. And he's not our picture perfect golden boy. There's obviously moves that he does that just he kind of leaves your head scratching, and he's not perfect, but he is not to blame for the way that last season played out. And that's all I'm going to say.
That's another thing we're not going to talk about on the show anymore is Foligno. I saw him at Fenway Park in a Boston Red Sox jersey. I'm like, dude, you are killing me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're killing me here.
And further Alex's point too, I mean, he mentioned the moves that, Dubas made in theory at the time were the right ones. I mean, we talked about the Tyson Barrie ones quite a bit. That was the right move. Granted, we lost Kadri, and Kadri brought everything that we still loved. Bringing in a right-hand D-man who had a career year, thought it would have been great. However, things didn't go as planned. So Dubas is making the right moves. Some of them just didn't plan out as he had hoped. And you can't fault him on that, because if he didn't make that move, then the fans are probably going to say, well, he should have done it. And like Alex said, if he didn't sign Matthews and Marner, we'd be at square one where they're probably fielding offers from other teams, and you don't want to do that. So, and also I think that his new way of thinking with the analytics side, with the underlying numbers, and trying to maybe, I think you would, again, to hate to go back to the signing of HYMAN with Bunting, Ritchie, Kasha, and all that. This is kind of like a move that Billy Beane did in, Moneyball, where signing players that, still have an impact, but you had cheaper value instead of signing a Johnny Damon to a massive $15 million contract that he normally is. And that's exactly what happened. So I think this whole new school mentality or new way of thinking is still, maybe people aren't used to it yet. I don't know, but at the same time, it's working. It has shown success.
Let me add too.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Prof.
Let me add too that a couple of weeks ago, when Matthews first came out after his operation and talked to the press, one of the things he said was that it mattered to him that Dubas had faith in those people, even though they had not come through. It mattered to Matthews. What we're seeing is that the players like Dubas and want to play for him. And I think that we always say that their jobs might be on the line and probably are on the line. But I think the players are going to suck up and pull it together because they like Dubas. And that's how you talk about Burke and even Lamoriello, but those are different kinds of leaders. And Dubas is a leader who is in partnership with his players. And I keep thinking that is a good way to be a leader, and others may disagree, but I think the players are going to pull together because they think they're all on the same side with their management, with their organization. I think that's a huge benefit for the team.
One final point I want to make to add to what I said before. Just to prove that it's not we're not clinging to Dubas just for the purpose of clinging to him because he's Kyle Dubas. I'd like to think that with every GM in the past, I have been fair in my judgment of the moves that they've made. I'm not biased. I call the moves how they are. And Brian Burke, for example, when you look at Brian Burke, he obviously gets a bit of a negative rap in Toronto because you look at his move, like when he traded the picks that ended up being Rickard Rakell and John Gibson for Tyler Biggs because he wanted that big 6'2" forward to whatever. It didn't work out. That's obviously looked at as one of his worst moves. And then you think of the Phil Kessel trade where he traded away Sagan and Dougie Hamilton, both bad moves. But I can also recognize that he made some good moves. Trading Luke Schenn for James Van Riemsdyk was a hell of a move on his part. Acquiring Joffrey Lupul and I think it was Jake Gardiner for Francois Beauchemin, that was a great move on his part as well. So, and I had this opinion at the time too. You got to call the moves for how they are and set them apart from the GM. And the fact of the matter is, most of the moves that Kyle Dubas has made in the past year or two have been moves that the fans have been crying for. They've been crying for they cried for a backup goalie when Michael Hutchinson wasn't getting the job done. He got Jack Campbell. They were crying for grit. He went out and traded for Nick Foligno and signed Wayne Simmons. And then obviously the defense brought in Jake Muzzin and TJ Brody. So these have all been good moves. And just going back to my original point, the Leafs could have gone further if their stars decided to show up. So I think these moves on paper are all still good moves. And I think setting the GM apart from the moves is important, especially in this instance. But yeah, that's where I'll leave it.
So in short, we are Dubas defenders.
Yes.
No. I think it's fair, but I think also it comes across as Dubas defenders when at the same time we're also just writing it the way that we see it, as Alex said, and we're seeing it as a positive so far. And Dubas is the first one to say this season that he's on the hot seat, and we get that, and we've said that as well. So nice guy or not, it's time to perform, and it has been for a little while, and this is the last chance really for Dubas. So it's going to be interesting. The other thing I will say too is I shouldn't have referred to Brian Burke as being the mean guy, because if anyone's ever had the chance of chatting with him away from the cameras being all on him, he's probably one of the nicest guys out there too. So, and did a lot of great things with Toronto. So apologies for that. I felt guilty as soon as it came out. I couldn't think of anyone else, but that's the show, guys. As you can tell, if you've been listening closely, this was after game 1 of the preseason. So we're going to have so much more to talk about on the next show, because then we will see team 2. We'll see guys like Richie out there. Excited to see all these different guys. Hopefully we'll get a look at Peter Mrazek at some point here in the coming games as well. Hockey's back. Here we go. Thanks so much for joining us in the Maple Leafs Lounge. Thanks so much to my trusty buddies here, Peter, Jim, and Alex. I'll see you guys next week, and we'll see you back in the Maple Leafs Lounge 1 week from now.